Hey guys, welcome back. There are 6 MMOs on the horizon that are our next best chance at reclaiming those MMO glory days. As you'll see, some of these have a much better chance than others, but while some may not be the next quote-unquote WoW killer, we can hope that at the very least these MMOs are able to provide us a fun, and you might be interested to know that 3 of the MMOs on this list are scheduled to be released this year. A quick thank you to Fractured Online for sponsoring the video. Fractured Online is a top-down dynamic sandbox MMO that aims to be a more modern take on the survival MMO genre. The game is currently in beta and having a free open beta week starting May 25th through June 2nd, before entering early access in July or August. So if you're interested in trying out this exciting new MMO, you can do this for free this week. See the link in the description below and I'll touch more on it here in a little bit. Okay, now let's dive into the most interesting MMOs that are currently in development and not yet released. Throne and Liberty. Throne and Liberty is a AAA MMORPG set to be released on PS5 and PC later this year. If you're surprised, you're not alone. This one kind of feels like it came out of nowhere despite being in development since 2011. NCSoft has released very little information about this game until very recently. According to NCSoft, Throne and Liberty is a next-gen MMO on PC and console. Recently, they released this trailer playing in the background that has actual gameplay from the game. It looks like it's going to be actually gorgeous, and we'll touch on some of the things we can see inside of this trailer here in a moment. Throne and Liberty is a spiritual successor to Lineage 2. In fact, Throne and Liberty was originally going to be the next Lineage game, but in writing the story for the game, NCSoft realized it would best be served as an entirely new IP. As someone who put quite a few hours into Lineage 2 and then into Lineage 2 Classic, I'm very curious to see how much of Lineage will still be left in this game. In the past, NCSoft MMOs and Eastern MMOs in general have been accused of being too grindy by Western players. NCSoft has plans to try and help relieve that repetitive nature of grinding out XP in an area by allowing things like the weather to impact your encounters, or even allowing you to encounter entirely new monsters if you spend long enough in one area. Basically, they want the experience to vary even when you're doing the same thing in the same area. If done well, this could be a nice welcome change to the genre. Throne and Liberty will also feature siege battles. The siege battles look like they're going to be a significant part of the game, much like they were in Lineage 2. I mean, look at this footage. It looks absolutely insane. In Lineage 2, the guilds that would win the siege battles would end up controlling that castle or that town for a week or two, usually profiting heavily until it was allowed to be sieged again, at which point they would have to defend it. It was a massive part of the game, and the spread out nature of the scheduled siege battles allowed a nice balance between PvE and PvP content. It's going to be interesting to see how much of the PvP in Throne and Liberty is inspired by the Lineage 2 siege system. If you recall, Steven Sharif has said Lineage 2 has heavily inspired Ashes of Creation as well. If we look at the footage from the gameplay trailer, it looks like the player is going to be highly mobile, being able to grapple onto objects and even shapeshift into birds and wolves. It looks like the game's UI is going to be very clean and simple, and from the little footage we were able to comb through, so far it looks like the number of abilities you'll have access to at any one time will be closer in line to Lineage 2, ESO, or Guild Wars than say Final Fantasy XIV or WoW. NCSoft has made and published some amazing MMOs in its time and absolutely has the knowledge and the potential to do so again. As of right now, we know very little else about this MMO scheduled for release this year, which understandably has a lot of us asking if its release won't actually be pushed back to 2023. This MMO has been in development for over 10 years, and it has changed course a few times in that span. Let's hope their hard work pays off. Next, we have Ashes of Creation. Ashes of Creation is a massive MMO featuring a beautiful, seamless open world and is set to release on PC with no current plans for console. As of right now, there's no official release date that's been announced, but we still know a lot more about this game than most of the games on this list, as the developers have put a lot of effort into keeping the community updated on the progress of its development. The first thing we should mention is that the game did have a very successful Alpha 1 back in July of 2021, where players were allowed to play and stream and make content about the state of the game so far. The game looked amazing, but it was a firm reminder that it's a long way from being finished. Since then, we've seen some impressive progress, including the announcement that they had decided to switch from UE4 to Unreal Engine 5 to make sure that the game wasn't held back by an outdated engine when it finally released. Steven Sharif said that UE5 would allow the game to be built faster, perform better, and have higher graphical fidelity. And I've got to say, the footage they showed looks gorgeous. They also showcased a sophisticated character creation screen that allowed them to create highly customizable characters that looked amazing, especially when we remind ourselves this is the alpha version of everything, the rough draft if you will. If you've you've seen games in their alpha state before, you know how much polish can be added over the course of the development before their final release. So what's next for Ashes of Creation? Well, next would be Alpha 2, which is described as a persistent alpha. While details are light, it sounds like the game will be more or less permanently up, and they intend to have the core of the game assembled for this phase. I have seen speculation that Alpha 2 could happen as soon as the end of this year, but haven't seen any official word from the AOC devs themselves. The game obviously looks gorgeous, but so do a lot of MMOs that die almost as soon as they launch. So this begs the question, why do so many veteran MMO players call Ashes of Creation their last hope for the genre? I'd guess that it's because Ashes of Creation defines loot boxes, XP potions, and inventory problems as pay to win. That has a lot of people excited because the game has promised not to have any pay to win. In other words, Ashes of Creation will not have loot boxes, it will not have pay to advance faster, and it will not create inventory problems so that it can sell the solution. The best skins will be earned in-game, and if I understand it correctly, it looks like weapon cosmetics won't even be sold in the cash shop. They will be earned by playing the game. If this all holds true, Ashes of Creation may be the closest we've seen an MMO come to the glory days of MMO monetization. Back when cash shops were built for little more than server transfers and name changes. Back before they sold solutions to problems they created, and before they were selling level boosts, and before all of the best cosmetics were tucked behind a paywall. Combine that with its beautiful world, traditional MMO design, and ambitious scope, and you can instantly see why Ashes of Creation is currently one of the most anticipated MMOs of all time. Ashes of Creation will be sub to play with no upfront purchases, so you will not have to buy the game, but you will need to subscribe. It will feature the holy trinity of tank, healer, and DPS, and it's currently still fleshing out its combat system, but is trying to implement a hybrid system that uses both action combat as well as tab target combat. Combat is going to be a make or break feature for a game in this genre, so there's understandably a lot of players reserving their excitement until the combat system is fully unveiled. Ashes of Creation also has some innovative features, including things like plans to feature a dynamic world that changes based on player behavior. If a particular race or player contributes to the progression of an area, that area's metropolis will take on the architectural styles of that race. If players spend more time in one area than another, that area will advance in terms of both its difficulty and its rewards. In other words, areas of the world can level up with the player base. If the community spends enough time in an area, they might uncover a dungeon or a raid that was previously not available. For this reason, every server might actually end up looking a little different as players end up progressing some nodes over others. But back to reality for a moment. Sadly, Ashes of Creation is still a long ways out, and the devs haven't even dared to speculate a release date. It should probably hurry though, as the last thing it wants to do is release at the same time as the next behemoth MMO. Combine that information with a job posting where they were seeking an action combat designer, it looks like the game's combat is aiming to evolve past the tab target days of WoW and Final Fantasy XIV in part or in whole. The game appears to be being built on Unreal Engine, as it is hiring developers with Unreal Engine experience, and it is confirmed that the game will have the Holy Trinity. In a tweet, he said the Holy Trinity mostly works, and it sounds like he intends to build group content with the traditional tank, healer, and DPS in mind. And don't worry, fishing is also confirmed as of a tweet in June of 2021. According to a tweet in December of 21, they plan to start having public dev updates in 2022. Hey, it's 2022 right now, so that means if they stick to this, we could start seeing some actual tangible information about the game begin to trickle out here very soon. It sounds like they want the dungeon party size to be around 6 as of a tweet in March of 22. This sounds pretty healthy as it allows for a tank, a healer, as well as up to 4 DPS, which would be great for keeping the DPS queue short. If you've queued as a DPS in almost any MMO, you know how long these wait times can be. They've stated they aren't trying to reinvent MMOs, they want to make something familiar while innovating a little bit where it makes sense. One interesting choice: make race cosmetics so that you can focus on making your character look how you want it to look. We've seen other MMOs take this approach, especially as of late. Your racial choices in MMOs is becoming very cosmetic, especially when you look at, say, Final Fantasy XIV, and it sounds like Riot is going to double down on that design philosophy. We have no idea when Riot's MMO will be released, but based on other games in the category, a 4 to 7 year window seems reasonable. If the game does come out, it's going to be huge, and we'll definitely be there to check it out. Fractured Online. Fractured Online is one of the more interesting options on the list, in part due to the immediacy of its release. The game is currently in beta with players playing it every day. It also has one free week where anyone can download the game and try it, coming up here on the 26th of May. So this is a game we actually know a lot about, with a projected release date of this year. Fractured Online is an isometric dynamic sandbox MMO developed by Dynamite Studios based out of Italy. What does that actually mean? Camera view and controls are reminiscent of Diablo and attempts to bring back some of the best parts of Ultima Online. The game features action combat and hundreds of abilities and dozens of status effects. All the items that you and others equip are crafted by the players from raw materials that they extracted from resource nodes or monsters. Fractured is described as dynamic due to the player-driven in-game politics and the economies as players and guilds vie for control of desirable territories throughout the game. It is a sandbox MMO due to the total freedom you have while developing your character. The game is classless, so you can combine any items and any skills you want while developing your character as you play the game. For those of you who enjoy a more thematic approach to your character, they have you covered as well. They're adding abilities to the game that will allow you to ultimately be a fleshed out ice mage or a pyromancer, for example. So if you want to lean into a thematic look, feel, or archetype for your character, you certainly can. One of the first things you'll have to decide on is what planet you will be on. This choice will not only impact the look and feel of your zone, but also the type of PvP that you have or don't have. There are 3 planets that you can choose from, different tiers of PvP or lack thereof. Arboreus is the peaceful and mostly safe planet where you can't be ganked or PK'd by other players. Tartaros is on the opposite end of the spectrum with full loot and hardcore PvP for those hardcore PvP players out there. And then right in the middle of those is Syndasia, the in-between, where you could be a criminal and you could PK someone, but there's going to be punishments involved for doing so. Right now, Fractured Online is aiming for a combination of horizontal and vertical progression and trying to create a ton of content so that players don't feel like they need to grind out the same thing over and over. There's 3 elements to character progress. The first is going to be your vertical progression, and that is your talent tree. This immediately reminded me of Path of Exile's talent tree, although a lot less complicated, as it's quite a bit smaller for now. This talent tree does have me excited. I've always really enjoyed the talent tree in Path of Exile, so having a more tamed down version of one that might be a little more approachable for more people sounds like a lot of fun. The second form of progression is going to be your horizontal progression, which is going to be acquiring abilities which are acquired by killing monsters. Different monsters drop different abilities, so you are encouraged to go and kill all types of monsters in all types of places to collect all of the abilities. Remember, this is a classless game, so you start with very few abilities and then you go and farm out the abilities that look cool or exciting to you. The third form of progression will be your gear progression, which is relatively fast and is more about choosing the gear that complements the character you want to play, as opposed to constantly grinding for a decent set of gear like it's a second job. Unlike most of the MMOs on this list, we have a very defined roadmap that leads all the way to the game's release. As of right now, they plan to launch early access in July or August, a crafting profession update in September with new professions and new spells in October, and final content being added in the winter. This would lead to a full release of the game by the end of 2022, as long as everything goes according to plan. Fractured Online looks like it's going to be an exciting addition to the genre, and I plan to dive into it in a full review in the very near future, so watch out for that. Next up, we have a new ZeniMax Online Studios MMO. Or do we? This one's pretty interesting. ZeniMax Online Studios, developer of Elder Scrolls Online, is working on what appears to be multiple projects, and one of which seems to be an MMO. Concrete details are very light on this one, so forgive me as we delve into some speculation and some rumors. Now, let's dive in. Some rumors say that ZOS is working on a new Star Wars Mandalorian MMO. Incredibly random, right? Let's connect some dots and see if we can make that fit. Now, Disney owns Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and we know that Bethesda, sister company to ZeniMax Online Studios, announced an Indiana Jones title in the works. The Indiana Jones game appears to be being worked on by Machine Games, who was acquired by Bethesda's parent company. In summary, there is an open relationship already established between Disney and ZeniMax. If they gave ZeniMax Media an Indiana Jones game, why not toss their online arm a Star Wars MMO? It's not completely unreasonable. The idea of a Star Wars Mandalorian MMO is surprising surprising, but does seem plausible if you look at some of the games that the newly hired devs have worked on in the past. Take, for example, Ben Jones, who was hired in 2018 to be the creative director of a still unannounced project at ZeniMax Online Studios. Let's look at his history. If we look at some of his previous work, we can see that he started with Day of Defeat until that was sold to Valve back in 2002. I remember putting some serious hours into that game, and it's pretty wild to think that he was on the other side of it. He bounced around for a bit before ending up as the lead designer for premium content for Battlefield 4, but perhaps most interesting is that he left Battlefield 4 to start Fugitive Games, where they leveraged a successful Kickstarter to build Into the Stars. Into the Stars was apparently one of the first games to ship using Unreal Engine 4, and after finishing that game, he went on to work on a zombie survival game before beginning what he calls the most exciting and unique opportunity of his career at ZeniMax Online. Now, for a man with a track record like that, to say the next project is the most unique and exciting of his career, well, I suppose he has to say that in some ways, but still, he could have said nothing, and it does give the impression that whatever he's working on is going to be huge. If we sum up his career, we see shooters, and we see a passion project about a game that takes place in space. On top of that, ZeniMax hired devs that are experienced in spaceship-themed level design. Could be coincidence. So with all that speculation, let's take a look at what we think we know. ZeniMax Online makes online games, so we can assume at the very least they're working on multiplayer titles. We can take a leap and assume their hiring page hints at a new MMO, as it says, "We've learned a lot bringing the world of Elder Scrolls to life, and it's time for us to take those lessons and build a new AAA IP. The vision for our next game is grand in every sense of the word, and that's why we're developing a new engine to support the needs of the project and the studio. They are describing a game that is massive and will utilize what they learned from ESO to create a new IP. So we know it's massive, not unlike ESO, but also definitely not ESO, because it's a new IP. And interestingly, they're building the engine in-house, meaning it wouldn't be one of the many UE5 MMOs that's currently in the works. One thing to note, however, is that we did see ZeniMax Online Studios post job listings requesting people with Unreal Engine experience. So because we know that ZOS is both building its own engine for something huge and potentially building something on an Unreal Engine, I wonder what the possible UE project is. Is this supposed Mandalorian game the MMO, or is it something else that they're making on Unreal Engine? Or does it even exist at all? At this point, we really don't know. What we do know is that ZeniMax Online Studios, the maker of Elder Scrolls Online, has been working on a new unannounced project since 2018, and it was confirmed in 2019 by Matt Furr. That's about it. They have described it as grand and massive and benefiting from their experience making ESO, which is a different MMO. They have hired people with experience building space games, and rumor mills are suggesting that it's something Mandalorian related. One of their projects appears to be an MMO on an in-house engine, while the other appears to be being built on Unreal Engine. It appears that they are at least 4 years into active development, so hopefully we'll find out a lot more about this new MMO in the not too distant future. It does appear to have a lot of the same people that made Elder Scrolls Online working on it, as we've seen devs leaving ESO to go begin work on this unannounced project. It's going to be fascinating to see which ideas they take from ESO and which ideas they leave behind. Either way, it's incredibly exciting to see yet another AAA Western developer taking a stab at the MMO genre. Next, we have Bellatorres, an MMO just announced in April of 2022, built in Unreal Engine 5. It's going to be a PC exclusive, built with Western players in mind, and made by NU in Korea. Planned for release in 2022, this is another MMO we know surprisingly little about, especially when you consider that their goal was to launch the game or the beta or both in 2022. Bellatorres has been in active development since 2017 and has garnered a ton of money from massive companies such as Tencent and even Epic for its development. Epic's investment could have something to do with the fact that this might be the first Unreal Engine 5 MMO to release. According to the developers, the goal for Bellatorres is to compete with and exceed the success of BDO. One red flag is that NU was previously a mobile game company, but on the flip side, the current CEO is the former CEO of NCSoft Taiwan in 2003 for 8 years, which means he was part of the Lineage 2 success in Taiwan. In addition to that, he was also the senior director for Blizzard Korea in 2016. So despite the company having a past built on mobile games, I think there's still a lot of potential for this MMO to be something exciting. It's impossible to tell for sure until we know a lot more about it. On that point, what do we actually know about the game? Surprisingly, very little. Bellator's will have elements of survival, progression, and adventure, along with large-scale PvP. If these images of the art are to be believed, it looks like the game will feature more realistic armor design as opposed to the high heels and lingerie we are used to seeing on female characters in Eastern MMOs. But I can't get past the fact for an MMO that is supposedly releasing this year, we know almost nothing about this game. The art looks gorgeous, and I'm curious to see what sort of monetization and gameplay the MMO goes for. Both of these things could make or break the game here in the West, and we still know absolutely nothing about it. Once again, if it's releasing in the next 6 to 7 months, as they say it is, that's going to have to change soon. So there you have it. These are the most exciting unreleased MMOs that we know about today, with 3 of the MMOs on this list aiming for release in 2022. MMOs have a way of being delayed, so it'll be interesting to see how many of those 3 actually hit their targeted release date of 2022. Members for supporting the channel. To become a YouTube member, check out the link down in the description below. If you're looking for an MMO you can play this week, be sure to check out one of the videos popping up on screen right now. I hope you have a fantastic day, night, or evening, and I'll see you in the next video.